Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. My guest today is a fellow American that is living over here on the other side of the pond with me, but he's in the Netherlands. His name is Jared, and he's just made the move to Amsterdam about 9 months ago with his entire family. So we dive into all things Dutch today. We talk about why we both love the Netherlands as a place to visit and live, and how he was able to make the move there via a program called the Daft Program, which is an entrepreneurial program set up by the Dutch government to invite entrepreneurs to come and set up a life there in the Netherlands. So he's leveraged that program to create a pretty epic life for himself, which he says is pleasant and comfortable and has done wonders for his family. We also talk a bit about his backstory and how he's lived in multiple countries across the world and just what it has meant for him personally, professionally, and his entire family to have this opportunity to live in the Netherlands. He's loving it. I loved talking with him about it. It was a lot of fun. I'm craving another trip back now after this conversation. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope you'll help me in welcoming Jared to About Abroad. Yeah, so unfortunately, I think that we got some of your typical Dutch weather down here in Spain, and people are kind of freaking out. It's been hilarious. It's been raining for 3 weeks, and people are not really sure what to do with their lives. The whole thing here in Spain is like people are, the idea is you live outside, and now people can't go outside, so they're like, what do we do?
Yeah, the funny thing is that they have the same idea in the Netherlands, just requires a significantly different set of gear. You can't, slightly water resistant isn't really a thing here. It's either waterproof or it's a sponge. And I found that out. Our company has tactical jackets that we use as sort of our letter jackets for our company. I thought, I'm all set for Dutch weather. This thing is, designed for commandos, and made it like about a week and a half through August. And it was just could not keep up with the Dutch hydration syndrome. It is intense up here.
Yeah, it blows my mind. Like one of my favorite things about the Netherlands and like Amsterdam in particular is like the bike culture. But like the fact that the bike culture, like everybody rides a bike and they just don't care at all that it's just like going to rain on them while they're riding a bike. And I'm down here like when it's sprinkling, just like covering myself in a trash bag or something.
Yeah, it's a little more prep, right? All of your suede doesn't really sell very well here. It's not a thing. But with the bikes, you just kind of get the right jacket. They've got some raincoats that actually are designed for riding bikes. Put your hands through and this whole thing, and it's you look very Matrix, in your trench coat and all of this stuff. But it's you just do it, and there really is no better way to get around the bikes. I mean, the travel time is usually about 5 to 10 minutes faster by bike than by public transit, and gas prices are crazy. So you just bike, suck it up and go get a coffee and whatever else will put you in a recovery mode after a cold brisk bike. It's actually the wind here more than the rain that gets you. The North Sea winds. I mean, you'll see just a half dozen bikes just blown into the canal and stuff like that, pretty regularly. So it's a thing.
Oh man, I'm also like a big fan of the pedestrian zones, biking. Like that's one of the things I think that just like kind of always attracted me to Europe. Coming from the US, I don't know if you can relate to this, but like coming to European cities, I was just sort of infatuated by like, I'd never have to drive. I just walk or bike everywhere. And it's a weird thing that I think I can like never give up now.
Yeah, I did a trip back to Texas, I guess in February, and it was like half in Houston, half in Austin. And just flying into Houston, I had forgotten that I haven't really seen a parking lot in 9 months. And I'm in Houston, and all I see are parking lots or people parked on the highways, right? It was amazing. And it was really nice weather when I was there. And I was like, oh, I got in on Friday and I'm going to meet one of my colleagues for a drink. And oh, there's a bus that just goes right there. And I told him I was just going to take the bus over. He's like, are you crazy? You'll be murdered 3 times before you get there. And like, oh, right. Houston. Yeah. Gotta disconnect from, the peace and tranquility. My wife and I have kind of joked that, some of the beautiful parks here, and there's a lot of rainbows in the Netherlands because it's always raining and whatnot. So we have a couple of these moments like, I think we just moved to Hobbiton, right? Like we're in the Shire here because it's like everything is soft and gentle, and you just ride your bikes everywhere. Everyone says good morning, and then you're back in Houston and been stabbed 3 times before you even get your luggage off the belt.
Yeah, man, it's something funny. Like the public transport thing is a weird thing for us as Americans, right? Like we just like, I mean, if you're in like New York or something, you use the subway, but I mean most places like we don't think of using a bus. We don't think of using the.
It's for people who don't own cars, right? And if you're American, you own a car because that is oftentimes a lot of, at least in Texas, a big part of your identity, right? Here it's not the case. I mean, you see millionaires on a $50 bike that has a $10 lock on it, and if it gets stolen, whatever, they'll get another one. I mean, it's just it's a very different rhythm. The thing that's really blown my mind here is more than once there's this big bridge that we have to go over that has like 5-story barges full of coal and stuff on it. I mean, it's a big bridge, but there's a lot of construction around there, and you'll just see construction workers, guys shoveling asphalt or gravel, like singing while they work, like it's some 1950s musical or something like that. And if you think back in the States, like when was the last time you heard someone singing with the joy of their humble job? Like, there's no joy in a humble job in the US, right? These guys have healthcare. They've got a place to live. Their kids are going to school. Like it's sorted out here. So, take a job shoveling, they're outside looking at the tulips. Life is good. I have to question some of my life decisions. Like, should I have been a construction worker in the Netherlands and, this whole internet? So
I had someone on the show like a couple months ago that was talking about this. She lives in like what I would call Pleasantville. Like you're living in the Shire. She lives in Pleasantville, in this town in Germany. And she was saying like in this town, they have these the town's called Freiburg, and it's a whole episode just us nerding out about Freiburg. Okay. So there's these little there's little canals. I don't know like what you'd call them, little creeks or canals running along all the sides of the roads where the water runs off. And they've somehow made like drainage beautiful, right? Like that's kind of a tough thing to do. And she said there's people that their job there is just to scrub those little canals, like. And it's a great job. Like it's a local person's, maybe not a dream would be too much to say, but something along those lines where it's like, oh, that's a good working job. And all they do is they have these special little tools and they clean these little canals, and that's their whole thing. And it's like they're living a good, happy life. She said the exact same thing.
The Europeans have chosen life. There's a French version of it. There's a Spanish version. Everyone has a slightly different calibration. But at the end of the day, that's one thing that Europeans sort of in the post-war, World War II environment have relied on is that, the average person should be able to live a comfortable life. That really kind of makes for a wonderful society, I have to say. There's certainly, I have a little bit of survivor's guilt moving here. We'll leave the U.S. perspective off for a bit, but it's wonderful here.
Yeah, I've fallen in love with it as well. I get it. It's interesting. So I don't know all of your history. I'm excited to dive into it, but I also know this is not your first stint living outside of Texas. So I'm curious, like had you lived in Europe or let's back up even more. What are some of the other places you've lived around the world?
So I went to Europe right after high school. I took kind of a gap year. I don't think it was as formal as that. It was just the 90s, and it was kind of everybody was laid back about going to school and whatnot. I didn't go see, all of the touristy things. I had a Euro pass, and I just kind of crisscrossed across all of these different cultures and foods. And back then there wasn't a euro. So it was, I have, 20,000 lira. How many, Deutschmark does that take to get to, to buy a sandwich in Paris, right? Or something. I mean, a lot more heterogeneous in a lot of ways. But I really fell in love with just people I met on the train and youth hostels and all that. And it just really kind of got its hooks into me. So I ended up meeting a woman, and we had a sort of an ill-considered early marriage. At that point, she's German. I got a pretty good dose of. I wasn't living in Europe, but I was living with a European. So I got some, and we were back and forth to Germany quite a bit. And so I became sort of less American and more European in terms of a lot of the ways I was living. That was about 5 years of my early adulthood. So after college, I got a job, took me to Vietnam, and that's a whole crazy story in of itself. But I spent about 7 years in Southeast Asia, split kind of evenly between Vietnam and Thailand. So I was in Ho Chi Minh City, Bangkok, and Chiang Mai, and that was a very intense career-wise and intense growth and just perspective on life. After that, I was back in the States. I went to Fort Worth, which is as foreign as any of the other places that I'm mentioning today. In a lot of ways, Cowtown, it was like being transported to the 1950s or something. It was pretty wild. 2 years there, and then I was in Sweden for a year, and then from Sweden I moved to China for 2 years, where I met my wife and had my first kid, and then back to the States for about 8 years, and then now we're in for the last 9 months or so. So yeah, a couple stamps in the passport.
I have so many questions because I'm just I kind of want to start with Fort Worth, Texas, but considering we're two Americans and it's about abroad, I'll steer clear of that one. But I'm chuckling on the inside.
It's a very traditional Texas town, and you can just. When I lived there, I said I would only go 3 places, which was Central Market, Austin, or the airport. Were kind of the 3 places in Fort Worth that I went. It's fine, perfect for some people. It was absolutely ridiculous for me to.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine going from Ho Chi Minh City to Fort Worth, like that. And you're talking about this growth and evolution that you went through in Southeast Asia, and then that transition must have been such a dichotomy.
Yeah, a lot of people in Fort Worth thought I was British, and it's I grew up in Austin. I have a degree from UT. My parents met at UT. I'm very much a Austin person, but they were like, "You're foreign." Something. So it was a thing.
I guess outside of Austin, you could be foreign in Texas, right? Austin's a pretty strong bubble.
Increasingly so. But it definitely helped me understand what lifestyle I don't want to have. But I did have kind of a European lifestyle there. I actually lived right across the street from where I worked. So I only drove my car on weekends. Everything was, they have a nice little downtown area. And so we went to this Italian place and, after work every day and drank Peronis and ate pizzas with a couple of Italian guys that worked at this place. And so it was, I guess I didn't blend in too much. So it just kind of kept my own. Other expats.
Yeah. I mean, were you always kind of predisposed though to this more of an international lifestyle? I mean, you've married, 2 foreigners, you've lived in multiple countries, you felt European when you moved back to Texas. Do you think you were always sort of seeking this international lifestyle in a way?
Yeah, I suspect so. I think back when, I was real into King Arthur and all this stuff. And I read pretty voraciously growing up. And I remember that I went to a Montessori school when I was 2nd or 3rd grade. So I never actually learned English phonetics. I was really bad at spelling, probably arguably still am in some ways. But I actually read a lot of British novels. And so I remember throughout school being really confused as to whether I was what the American English spelling was, the S's and the Z's and stuff like that, because I'd been seeing them so much. So I guess, I never really matched Texas. And so I think that there was some, love of the foreign that's always kind of been in my DNA.
I think that about myself as well. There's a ton of, it's so interesting listening to you because there's a ton of parallels between our stories. A few bullet points off the top. I also kind of cut my teeth in traveling in Europe by you railing back and forth, zigzagging all across Europe, and spent some time in China as well. And just kind of fell in love with the European lifestyle. After spending some time in a bunch of different parts of the world, I was just kept getting called back to Europe. And I think it's the lifestyle, you said that exactly, like, you're just kind of living a European lifestyle. And I don't know how to describe that to people sometimes. Like, people will say, what is it about Spain or Europe, or, what is it? And I'm like, it's just it's the lifestyle that kind of calls to me. And then the second bit, I think, is, as you referenced as well, is like zigzagging from one country to another. Like, even though the euro's here and that's gotten rid of the Deutschmark and the lira and different currencies,
still very tribal over here. It's so tribal. I really thought that the EU was like a thing, but it's like a thin ribbon wrapped around a bunch of completely non-integrated things. I've been I don't know. I guess it's always been Europe, but I speak French and a little German and whatnot. I'm learning Dutch, so I'm not completely oblivious to these other cultures. But yeah, they're really just completely it's hard to sort of fathom. I mean, I'd say that there's more in common between New York and Alabama than there is between, the Netherlands and certain parts of Belgium, right? Like, I mean, it's just, and that's 150 miles apart, right? So, it's the amount of traffic in crossing Houston, you'll go from like 3 different languages, in one drive. So it's pretty shocking. And that's part of, that's part of the wonder. If you like being foreign, this is a great place. You can be foreign, 3 times a day.
That's the best. I was going to ask you if you could describe it, and you did. So that nailed it. Yeah, perfect. And so one thing I really want to get into is this move to the Netherlands. We can just start with why the Netherlands. Not that you need to explain it to me, because I get it. I absolutely love Amsterdam. I've said on this show many times that it's one of the few other cities in Europe that I really have a call to go actually live in. Like, I could live in a million different places. I'd be happy in a lot of them, but it's one of them where I'm like, I really want to go spend some time there. But I'm curious about your story, like why the Netherlands and Amsterdam, and then we'll get into what life's like there.
Well, when I was leaving Sweden, I was working. I was freelancing. I was actually making surprisingly good money freelancing, and I for various reasons I kind of needed to get out of Sweden. I was doing a graduate program there that didn't really work out for me, and so the U.S. was right in the at the middle of the recession. There was no work there. It didn't seem good. I thought about going back to Vietnam, but that seemed sort of not moving forward in some ways. And so, I was actually going to set up a freelancing business in Amsterdam to work with these 2 clients. Now, right before I set up the company and all of that stuff, both of the clients kind of evaporated. And so I was going, okay, well, what do I do? And there's a treaty in the Netherlands called the Daft Treaty, the Dutch-American Friendship Treaty. And so as a U.S. or Japanese citizen, you can basically get semi-automatic work residency visas for you, your family, healthcare, this whole, like, you get the full experience. And you need to move like 4,500 euros in capital into the Netherlands, and they like roll up. It's an entrepreneurial freelancing kind of scenario. And so that I knew about that treaty from that moment. And so that was like, it's kind of the easiest way if you don't have just tons of cash to move into the EU. I mean, you either can marry someone, which wasn't an option. You can get a golden visa in Spain or Portugal, like buying an apartment or something like that. And that's a couple €100,000. And, unless you have, relatives or whatnot that are 1 or 2 generations away, countries don't really want you to just be digital nomads and just show up, right? Like you need to kind of come through whatever doors they have open. And so the Dutch historically have always been very welcoming to, going back to the Spanish Inquisition and all the Jews that left there and all that stuff. And it's always been a commerce hub. And so if you're coming to do business, the Dutch will have you as an American. And I think for other nationalities, it's doable, but they have there's a deep and a very like straightforward treaty that just says, unless you really don't have a plan or don't have the money or doing something totally sketchy, and they have a pretty broad definition of sketchy over here. So, you can arrive. And so that was an option. We looked at Canada, like Vancouver, Montreal. We just wanted to get out of the US. The US, from my perspective, I'm just kind of putting the US on a timeout. It's got to grow up and get its shit together a little bit, frankly. And when it settles down, then we'll talk about it again. But for the time being, I just don't need the aggravation. So since my wife was kind of feeling less engaged in the U.S., there was as a foreigner, as a foreigner of some color she definitely did not feel as welcome in the U.S. And that's something as a 6'3" white guy I don't really understand. So I wanted to take that seriously, and we wanted to go to a place that was very open to foreigners and to had an international energy. And Amsterdam definitely qualifies as that. So that was kind of a lot of our calculus. Was we wanted a place that was modern and sophisticated enough, but not so fussy as Paris or London, where you're just it's just so intense living there, right? And Amsterdam is kind of like a really big village. It really has this very. I mean, it's pretty hard to be stressed out here. I'm sure you can do it, but there's a lot of things in Amsterdam just saying like sit here and have a beer, look at the ducks, swans and stuff. There's tulips. It especially with the bike riding, it puts you in kind of a happy mood. I don't know. There's something very very jovial about riding a bike, and you can feel it kind of instantly when you're here, and it just puts people in a happy place.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. I mean, like I said, one of my favorite cities, and you said it right. Like it feels like a big village. Like there's different neighborhoods that have different vibes, but like the architecture, the flow of the city, it's not a mega metropolis. It's not London or Berlin or even like the hecticness of Rome. I mean, it's got a calmness to it that just kind of works. But then at the same time, super international, people from all over the world, business friendly, all the amenities you could ask for, tons of like great food and awesome transportation. You want to hop around to other places in Europe, you've got major international airport there.
They've got that part sorted. I mean, infrastructure in the Netherlands. I mean, they had a little hiccup with the trains this weekend where they didn't run for a day, which kind of screwed up some people's lives. But other than the occasional happenstance, like I can't fathom that I'm in another city in like 25 minutes from my house. I just and I mean that's like, oh shit, I've got a meeting at noon, and I leave at 11:15 and I'm in Utrecht, no problem, and it's like, that's just very, very, very integrated. And I think, if you look at the Dutch history, they added 40% of the surface area of the Netherlands in the last 300 years, right? So they literally blocked off a huge bay and then drained it of seawater, filled it full of fresh water, and started building islands and all this stuff. So the expression over here is that, God created the earth, but the Dutch created Holland. And they're kind of right. I mean, they literally decided that they wanted this land and they wanted it to work this way. And everything here is done very intentional. And they had some good ideas about it, right? Like we were in Germany, we were in Frankfurt and whatnot, and they've got trams and some metros there, but it's more spread out. It's a 10-block walk to a tram. In Amsterdam, it's 2 or 3 blocks, right? And they run, oh, we missed the tram. Well, there'll be another one in 4 minutes, right? So you don't even have time to like scroll through Reddit or anything while you're like, oh, I'm already, like, I get that all the time where it's like, oh, I'm already there, or I almost missed my stop because I'm just moved around this country so efficient. So it's really pretty wonderful.
Yeah, it's funny. In Spain, something that I've noticed is like, as you go to different parts of Spain, there are certain like hubs where a lot of people from other European countries come to. So like, for instance, Mallorca is like full of Germans. Like when you meet a foreigner there's a pretty good chance that they're German. Or in the south of Spain, like on the Costa del Sol, they're normally like British or Irish. In Valencia, that's Dutch. There's like 30 flights a day between the Netherlands and Valencia. So there are tons of Dutch here. I have a bunch of Dutch friends that have either moved here or spend most of their time here. I'm at my co-working. I would bet that there's, of the 50% or so that are foreigners, about 50% of those are Dutch. So I get to interact with a lot of Dutch people and talk about, what they love about there, what they love about here. And I've traveled there quite a bit. And I just am always, I like all the things that you just said. That's what I come back to. Like it's efficient, it's pleasant, everything works. And that's a really nice change of pace when you're coming from Southern Europe sometimes, where you just said like, oh, the train didn't work that day. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much a daily occurrence.
Yeah, I mean, it was in the national news for like people are losing their jobs over it. It was a big deal that the trains didn't work for really for a few hours, but that caused a whole day of delays. It's very exceptional. And it's funny. The Dutch the Dutch and the Germans have a lot of common cultural components and a lot of divergent ones as well. And the trains running on time, efficient, clean cities. that's kind of like that common, Rhine Valley kind of energy. But the thing that's funny about the Dutch, and the reason that they really kind of endear themselves to me, is that they have a lot of rules. They really like breaking them too, and so like they're totally, like, culturally they're totally okay with bending the rules as long as it's cool and doesn't cause any problems for anyone else. So there's this whole thing: if you don't swipe out on a subway, you get a €20 fine, right? And you can go online, but it's a huge pain to recover that. So they really try to make sure that you check in and check out, right? I did it wrong my first week here. And so I didn't check. I didn't see coming from the airport, picking up someone that I didn't check in. I didn't see the check-in thing. So then I needed to get out, and I hadn't checked in. So I went to the info booth. I said, hey, stupid American here. I'm new. I don't know what's going on. I don't want to get the €20 fine. How do I do this? Right? In the info booth, the woman with the paddle boards and all of the, like, she's official, probably 65 years old. And she's like, oh yes, €20. If you talk about any kind of cost, that hurts the Dutch at their core, at their soul. Like spending I've been reprimanded for buying a ticket that cost 50 cents more, and they're just like, are you crazy? Like really on my case about it. And so €20, this was like, man, this is a big deal. And so she's like, you know what you do? You see that person? You just go through the turnstile. Just go right with them. Like, just go at the same time and just like jump the turnstile. Like there's like camera. I mean, I'm in Amsterdam Central, and you're telling me to like jump the turnstile. There's cops everywhere. Like, I don't know. She's like, oh, okay. You don't feel comfortable with that. She's like, okay. And then she just locks up her booth and then comes and like badges me out. Like completely just like sneaks me out, and there was a woman waiting in line who's like, hey, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm busy, helping this guy, like, illegally like get out. And I just went, that's like, it just puts a smile on your face. Like, I mean, obviously they're going to get lots of money out of me. I'm going to be running their trams for the rest of my life, probably. And I just love that, like, that's a lot of paperwork and a little bit of cat. Like, let's just cheat. It's easier for everyone if we just cheat. So let's just do it. And I hadn't found that same energy in my time in Germany. So it was just like, I like the rules, plus there's options here. They're merchants at the end of the day, and very, very sort of practical about what's important, big picture kind of stuff. So I love the Dutch. The Dutch make me smile. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. You said they choose life. I mean, that was choosing life, right? Like, she's like, we could be bothered by this and figure.
Yeah, what a hassle and all that stuff. Like, let's just here. Oh, you don't feel comfortable jumping the turnstile. There you go. Yeah, just go. And and I've had several other moments with like officials where I'm like, are you like, am I going to get arrested for this? Like, are you really? Okay, really? All right. So, all right, cool. Thanks a lot. And they do that. They're just, bus drivers all say good morning. It's just, I mean, it's not to say that there aren't, jerks here like there are anywhere. I mean, you can get run over on a bicycle. Like there's guys just hauling ass, everywhere. And I've got a 6-year-old on a little bike who's weaving back and forth on these Dutch bike highways, the fietspads that are like, people are just, looks like Tour de France. And, you've got, a guy with Pokemon cards in his spokes, and it can be intense, but we have not had, we've enjoyed it here. It's been good for the kids and for my wife, and she's felt much less isolated than she was in the US, and so she's not quite as gregarious as I am, but she's found the Dutch and just all of the other foreigners here, she's got a much bigger group of friends than I do at this point. So it's been kind of wonderful. Yeah.
Is that a pretty strong contrast to back home? I guess you're having the big social circle.
She felt a lot of microaggressions in the U.S. I mean, she's Chinese. With extremely fluent in English. I mean, I'm getting her to help with some transcription for our company today, right? So she's quite literate and international. I wouldn't say like she doesn't give off a particular foreign vibe or anything like that. A lot of people don't immediately notice that she's not American, but she just felt, I don't know, there was a lot more anger or hostility in the interactions. I don't know if that was her perception or Texas is usually pretty welcoming, but again, I've got the white guy perspective, which is probably pretty different. So
Yeah.
I've definitely, if you just look at the number of friends and the sort of social engagements and things like that, it's night and day difference. So yeah.
And how about the kids? Like, so you mentioned you have a 6-year-old, you have another child as well, correct?
A 9-year-old, yeah, 9-year-old, 2 boys. So in Texas, we got yelled at by one of our neighbors for letting our kids play in our front yard without being out there watching them. And here they get on their bikes and say, okay, after they eat lunch at like 11:30, and they're like, okay, we'll be back by 6. And this is a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old on bikes, and they just, yeah. I mean, we're in a little community kind of on an island right off Amsterdam. It's about 15 minutes to central from here, but it's a very safe neighborhood, even for the Netherlands. But I mean, it's on a street with cars and stuff like that. But they go and they go to their friend's house, they go to the park, they go, get into all kinds of trouble, which as a Gen X person, that's how I grew up, where, my parents are like, we'll have food ready in a few hours, swing by and, go drink from the hose or whatever. That whole culture in the 70s and 80s you were able to be independent as a child, where in the US, either rightly or wrongly, it's keep the children, school shootings and whatnot certainly help make parents nervous, for sure. But, here it's like there's a lot of other parents out and about, and, we keep an eye on their kids, and it just kind of, yeah. So my oldest just showed me, he wrote a full page essay in Dutch. My 9-year-old, yeah, I think there was some Google Translate in there, but he's like wrote an essay in Dutch that I couldn't read half of it. My Dutch is, starting, I would say, not very fluent, but I mean, I can order things, I can navigate. And he's going to Dutch public school in a few weeks. So
really?
They have this whole like newcomers program.
How long have they been there? When did you guys, what's the rough timeline?
Yeah. We arrived in like July. They started school in August, and we have to take the trams a ride. It's about a 30-minute bike ride right now, partly because it's 15 minutes on the way back after I drop them off, but about 30 minutes with a 6-year-old to get there. And it's like, one whole like big neighborhood area over. But now they'll be going like 200 meters from our house. So that will be, we can sleep till 20 minutes before school instead of getting up 2 hours and whatnot. So it's nice. But yeah, they have a really robust program here called the Newcomers Program, where they go to a special school to ramp them up on Dutch and to get them into Dutch public schools. And so in their class, they've got people from Venezuela, Uganda, Brazil, everywhere, China, et cetera. I mean, it's a complete, melting pot. And so it's really fun in the mornings with all the other parents, and you just hear, the Moroccans over there talking, and the Portuguese over here, and Russian over here. And yeah, it's a cool program, and it seems to work. Our kids picked up Dutch. They have several friends that don't speak English, and they just have fun speaking Dutch the whole time. So yeah, it's one of our sort of families that we're close to is from Brazil, and their daughter doesn't speak English, so they just speak Dutch to each other. So Portuguese to English, they just met in Dutch. It's kind of wild that way.
Yeah, both of us are like cheesy over here, like, because this is the kind of stuff that lights both of us up. I can see it does for you too. I mean, that's just such a cool experience, and I bring so many things to mind. Like, one, kids are so resilient and so capable of adapting. I talk to a lot of people who are interested in making the move abroad, but they're worried about their kids, and I'm like, kids seem to love it generally. Like, when I talk to people like you, they end up having a pretty good experience, or if nothing else, what an awesome learning experience, right? New languages, meeting people from all around the world, the cultural sponge that's getting absorbed there. I mean, they're picking up so much along the way. It just seems like an awesome experience for them. And I don't know if you have a different perspective, but that would be my assumption.
Yeah, I mean, our kids are pretty resilient. We've traveled a lot with them, just over the years. Even when they were little bitty, they've gone through passport control, dozens of times. So they kind of get traveling, because that's a big part of how we spend our recreational time is on trips. My wife is an avid traveler, and so I would say that every parent's concern about their kids is really the first 2 or 3 months. And then after that, it's a different whole thing. So there's a Japanese family that we're friends with. They've got 4 kids. And I would say the older the kids, the more trouble it is in some ways. So there's a continuum from kindergarten to whatever 12th grade or to graduating, and the further along they are, the more important friends are versus family, and that kind of hits right around middle school, where friends start to become more important than your family, and that's a healthy part of that, because at some point they need to move out of the house and go get a life, right? So our kids our oldest is kind of at the edge of that. Like, friends are becoming much more important, a much bigger part of his identity. He's 9 going on 10, it'll be 10 in August, so he's at the beginning of the end of the real easy time to move them around. But the Japanese family, so they have 3 girls and a son, and the son is I think 16, and he speaks some English, but he's having a tougher time just with the curriculum and all of that stuff. I mean, it's 2 plus 2 is easier than trying to learn calculus in a foreign language or something like that, right? So I know he's had a tougher go. And then in the Netherlands, at 12 years old, they have a pretty intense decision that is made as to whether or not you're kind of going to trade schools or to the university. There's kind of 3 different, there's like trade school, and then there's like a advanced school, like technician kind of thing, and then there's like the full university thing. And you decide that in middle school, and like that determines kind of your career. And there's a lot of critiques and whatnot on that. I don't understand enough about it to have an opinion. But so her oldest daughter is going into having to sort of make that choice, and she still is learning Dutch and all that. And so there's some of the newcomer stuff that the younger kids get it's different for the older kids. It isn't as, it's maybe a little bit of a gap in the planning around some of the reentry. So I definitely see some of the older kids having a little bit more of an effort, and they're going to feel maybe the absence of friends more. But for, if they're in anything that looks like a Muppet phase, they seem to rally really well. We've only had them say that they've missed their friends. They've mentioned it, but there was only one like sad moment, and that was when my wife, she had some pretty rough go with COVID and some sort of long COVID effects that were putting her in a pretty bad spot right when it started getting really cold, really dark, and really rainy, and that all just kind of hit right in like November. And there was a couple of sad moments where it's like, I miss my friends, I miss my mom and all of that, grandma and all of that. And so but that's really been about it. Otherwise, we check in on them regularly, and they're like, yeah, I'm fine, and off on their bike, and they're just like, okay, so there we go. So I think it depends on where you go. We have some friends that moved to Germany that I think they're right outside Munich, and some of their younger one had a harder time than their older one. So I think it depends on your kids, but man, they're resilient as hell. And I wish I could learn languages as quickly as they do. I mean, when I was younger, I picked up, Thai, where I could speak conversational Thai in about 6 months. And when you get into your mid 30s to 40s, your brain just dries up, and your ability to like store new languages just is in rapid decline. So, don't wait, I guess is the takeaway, right? No time like the present.
Do it early. Yeah, man. I'm experiencing this as well. Like I learned some German 15, 20 years ago, and I remember feeling like within 6 months I could speak, I was fine. And I mean, I'm learning Spanish, and I sometimes still think like, I should be better at this. And then I hear about your 9-year-old, writing an essay in Dutch within a year. You're like, what the hell, man? Like, this isn't fair.
It isn't. Yeah. What is it? Youth is wasted on the young. So yeah, it's exactly. So, I think that exposing your kids to languages early is just fantastic. Like our kids went to a French Montessori school in Austin. They don't speak a word of French really, or like bonjour, ça va kind of stuff. They don't remember any of it, but they at least learn to learn languages. And then, my wife's, native Chinese speaker. So they've got Mandarin classes, a couple times a week. So they're actually learning two languages at the same time, not including, and growing in English as their sort of primary language. And so I think that, we're pushing pushing the envelope on what their little brains can handle. But, at the end of the day, I mean, when they graduate and they're going to be, pretty fluent in three languages, I feel like that'll set them up for however we're screwing them up as parents and all of this stuff. They'll at least have tools to be able to get themselves right or go. They've got a lot of world that they can go connect with.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I mean, I'm partial. I'm pretty obsessed with, international business and culture and adapting to different parts of the world and working with people from other corners of the world. So I'm biased, of course, but I think it's a great service and an advantage that they'll have in a increasingly flat world where, we're working with people, we're collaborating with people all around the world every single day, multiple times per day. Knowing how to interact with people from different parts of the globe is a good thing, and across language barriers, cultural barriers, I think it's a nice advantage to have. We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This season is brought to you by my good friends over at Insured Nomads. They're the absolute best in the business when it comes to providing health, travel, and medical insurance for nomads, expats, and really just all forms of world travelers. I know insurance is often something that's overlooked when we're fantasizing about traveling the world, but it's absolutely necessity that we address this because often the policy you have in your home country isn't going to cover you while you're abroad. And it's also a requirement, as a lot of people may not realize, to actually buy private travel or expat insurance, as it's called sometimes, to obtain a visa or even enter certain countries. So fortunately, there are companies like Insured Nomads to help us with this. Not only do they have excellent coverage and great prices, but they're also providing a first-class experience with additional perks and best-in-class technology via their app. It's an amazing experience. I can't recommend it enough. Now, this is a company that was built by world travelers for world travelers. So they know what it's like to find yourself in a difficult medical situation abroad, and they want to keep you from having that same bad experience. So the next time you're planning a trip abroad, whether it's for a week or a lifetime, check out Insured Nomads via the link in the show notes. Hey guys, so many of you write in asking how to support the show best. And if you are listening and made it this far into the episode, then I'm going to presume that perhaps you're one of those people that wants to help. So if that's the case, the best thing you could do right now would be to open up the app that you're currently using to listen to this episode. Go to the little arrow thing that allows you to share, select it, and share it to one of your social media networks. That would be a huge, huge help. You can feel free to tag me at DC Warrington, and I'll slap you a virtual high five from wherever I am in the world. Thank you so much for the support. We really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy listening to the rest of this episode. One thing I wanted to ask you about was you touched on the I think you called it the Daft Program, which was basically your entryway into the Netherlands and therefore the EU. And you were right in citing that that's not an easily accessible thing generally to move from, say, the US to Europe. But this program sounds pretty sweet, and I don't really know a lot about it. So I wondered if we could go just a little bit deeper on kind of the criteria and process.
Yeah, I mean, if you have tons of cash, there's lots of places that'll have you. I mean, that's the thing. I haven't had that problem yet. I'm working on it, but so for us, our business is doing well, but not. I'm not. Still working. So we needed something pragmatic to be able to kind of get in there. And so the DAF treaty is really designed, I think, kind of fundamentally for freelancers. So if you're gig economy and all of that stuff, I mean, it's really pretty easy. You don't need a lawyer, but it wouldn't hurt. I think that would be a couple grand well spent just for getting all of the paperwork, and there's a sequence and a timing and all of that. But it has been, mine was more complicated because this company was a part of so I had a US based company and I was opening a branch. And so there was a third company that connected them. And that was a lot more lawyer.
You were opening a branch in the Netherlands.
Yeah. So that is a lot more complicated. And I'm not sure if we're getting a whole lot of benefit from it, but hey, here it is. So if you're just going to say like, hey, I'm an engineer or I'm someone in tech or whatever, and I want to live in the Netherlands and I want to, if I've got a couple of customers over there where I can be making a living, they'll have you. And I mean, a friend of mine who was a musician, I think he had like a little store or like kiosk selling like custom shoelaces or something like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a tech thing. Like you just need to be able to make a living. And it was about, I think that maybe it went up from like $2,000, but now I'm pretty sure it's 4,500 euros of capital that you need to bring into the Netherlands to be able to do all of that. And you need a viable business of some sort. I mean, you're not going to come over here and then not have any money and then expect the government to help you. That's not the game. But if you can make something that looks like a living, and depending on where you live, you can actually live very cheaply in the Netherlands. But that is not Amsterdam. So there's housing crisis over here that is actually worse than in the U.S. In a lot of ways. So it isn't perfect over here. Again, not a lot of land. They've had to add a lot to it. But yeah, so if your spouse comes over as a spouse, they also get a full work permit. So they can work anywhere. So my wife she works part-time sometimes for the company. And so we were going to maybe move her over as an employee, but we ended up moving over as a spouse. So she can just go get a job anywhere, which is, pretty awesome. Yeah, it is indeed. And kids, they get to go to school. We're all part of the healthcare. We have to pay in, of course, but we're Dutch in every way except, voting. We have a temporary permit for 5 years. And then we can apply for either citizenship or permanent residency. But there is a language requirement there. So you've got 5 years to get to pretty decent Dutch. So it's not hyper fluent, but you've got to be, fully conversant and able to, read and write and speak in Dutch.
Do they use the like A1, A2, B1, B2 scale?
Yeah. So it used to be A2, which was pretty easy and doable. Now it's B1. So that's a little, but apparently from A2 to B1 is apparently not that big of a thing. So I think if you're focused, you could probably do it in a year is kind of the impression I get. And, I'm now at the point where I'm able to understand Dutch a lot better listening. And so I'm trying to just keep picking away at it. But my wife, she loves languages and all of that. And so she's at E2 now after like 6 months of trying.
We won't toss her under the bus just yet. That's I do get that though. That's cool. So this Daft program, I mean, there's a lot of really strong benefits to this because the way this contrasts, it sounds like, to say a lot of the digital nomad visas that are emerging, or like the visa that I'm on here in Spain, which those visas essentially let you come and stay and sort of live as a tourist, but you have to prove that you have significant means to support you X of the system, like the government system, the social system. So I
can get away with a lot if you're not a problem, right?
Yeah, but you have to prove that you have an income coming in from outside X of Europe because they don't want you coming in and taking a European job, essentially. That sounds like that is not the case here. You're actually, do they actually want you to have like a physical presence or like they want it to be like a Dutch company, or do they want someone like?
Yeah, you can set up essentially, you can come in as a sole proprietor. And we have one US friend here who's essentially is a sole proprietorship. So he's created another entity around himself. It's not a separate company, but it's just a sort of another manifestation of him consulting in the US is now him here. And so he's essentially came in Daft that way. I set up what is called a BV, which is an LLC equivalent. So it's truly a separate company where I'm a managing director of this company and I'm an employee of it. And that way, which is important if you're trying to get things like mortgage. And so the banking system here is not as welcoming to Americans, thanks to, I forget the acronym, but it's not FUBAR or whatever, but essentially most European banks or global banks really don't want American customers because the IRS and the law that was passed about 5 years ago makes it incredibly hostile to any bank if they are doing any business with an American in terms of reporting and all that. So you can get a bank account here, but it took me about 100 days or more to get a bank account here. And that was not easy. So especially for your business, and then a personal one. Bunk is a great little service that you can kind of set up a digital bank, but you have to show a residency within 90 days to be able to, or they'll close your account. So you need to time that just right on all that. So banking was hard, but once you get the bank account, you get your BSN, your essentially your social security number. Once you get that, all of the dominoes start to fall into place. But it's kind of a chicken and egg where you need to rent a place to be able to get a BSN, but you need a bank account to be able to pay your rent. And you can kind of get stuck if you're not careful. And so having a lawyer that can help you sort of navigate and prioritize those things are good. But otherwise, there really isn't a lot of rejections. So you really have to have a bad idea to kind of be rejected. One of the guys that at the school, he setting up maybe a cutting board or charcuterie business, maybe. Like he's still in the I'm not sure phase. So he's over on Daft and no problem. And he doesn't have like a real business yet. He's kind of working on that. So I think you can lose money at your business for like 3 years before they start to get suspicious. So, it's pretty reasonable, as I would say.
Very welcoming. Yeah. And the aspect about your wife being able to work is huge too, because a lot of times it doesn't work that way. And I know people here there are people here that are on, many visas that allow them to be here, but their spouse can't work, which is a huge pain in the ass for their family. So that's actually like a massive added benefit there.
If it wasn't for the weather, this place would be 10 times as the population, right? The wind and the rain keeps a barrier to just everybody showing up in the Netherlands. But other than that, it is every encounter that I've had, from parking tickets, which I've had, to healthcare, where I was saying my wife had COVID and all that. We had some complications there. We're seeing specialists, and we don't know what we're doing with any of this stuff. It was all pretty much as easy as it could be. There could have been a couple of slight optimizations, and I'm a user experience guy, so pretty judgy about these things. And now that I've kind of get it. It's really easy to do everything here.
Has there been anything that negatively, like that shocked you in a challenging way? Like, oh, I didn't expect this to be this hard. You've lived in a bunch of countries, so you're probably pretty aware of what this process was going to be like. But anything that someone maybe moving to the Netherlands for the first time, you'd be like, you should know X.
You do not need a car, and you really don't even want one, would be my thing. So we had 2 cars in Texas, with the payment and gas and insurance and all that. And that money you can just not spend here. An e-bike, I would say, is a good idea. The wind will just you need a little assist. You will thank me for that. Yeah, things that are rough in the Netherlands. It gets dark, and if you have any of that seasonal darkness, I did a whole a winter in Sweden where it was just pitch black and 2 meters of snow. So I'm pretty resilient that way. My wife less so. So you need to actually take vitamin D pills here, which actually apparently help with COVID and are a good idea anyway. So everybody take your vitamin D. Just, everyone needs more vitamin D apparently.
Damn it, Netherlands. We keep trying to find something wrong with you and you keep coming back with the good stuff.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of vitamin D gummy bears in the US, and that makes it a lot easier than the sort of homeopathic drops in their milk. The kids were not liking that. So that, vitamin D gummy bears. There aren't as many good bakeries here as I thought. There's a lot of okay bakeries, but if you really like French, like sourdough, like stuff, it's kind of a schlep to go get those, but they have them, but I kind of thought they'd be more on every corner. And so there's a lot more of the more factory kind of produced bread here than I would have thought. Excellent snacking culture. I have never had a bad French fry here. And every French fry has been exceptional. Not just okay, exceptional. French fries, check. Yes, okay. Sauces. They do not order anything in the Netherlands with sauce on it. It is sweet mayonnaise, sweet peanut sauce, sweet curry sauce. like almost a dessert grade sauce coming from the States. I don't know what's going on there, and I have issues. So I've started making my own salsa at home just because I can't do that. I can't.
I have to say something funny on sauces, which somebody listening might be like, sauces? Like, this is a subject? It is.
It is an important thing. This is not a small deal. They put it on everything. So you need to be aware.
So here in Spain, it's the opposite. Like, it's like the Mediterranean diet. They use lemon or olive oil. So there's not a lot of sauce, and so it drives my wife and I crazy when we order like French fries. We'll be like, and we want a lot of ketchup, and they're like, oh yeah, sure, and they give you those one little tiny pack of ketchup, and I'm like, no, a lot. They're like, oh yeah, sorry, here's one more, and we're like, all right, listen, like when I say a lot, I mean like give me like 40 of those things, and so we joke, we're like, we're condiment people, we're used to our sauces and high quality.
Yeah. Okay, here's an issue. So it is raining. I'm looking out over the water right now. So I'm in three-dimensionally, I'm on an island. I'm like basically surrounded in 3 dimensions by water. And 4 or 5 euros for like a little bottle of water. And then I've got to pay 50 cents to go piss it out. Like, what the hell? This place is basically underwater. The water is everywhere at all times. And one time we went to a place and I said, can we just have tap water? Just give us like a glass. And they gave us a tumbler glass half full. Any more and you have to pay. Like, what is this weird water retentive nature here in Europe? Like, I'm sorry, but that's one of the few things I'm going to give to America as like, in Texas, you get, a 2-liter glass full of ice water. And I made ice the other day and gave myself an ice water, and it was so refreshing and delightful. So, so I mean, water and condiments, not really, deep, given all of the suffering in the world. These are first world problems, right? I mean, our condiments are slightly miscalibrated. I mean, it's pretty okay here. The weather is hardcore. Like you need gear like you're a fisherman some days. Like, like really that is absolutely critical. I don't know, man. I'm pretty happy. I don't have, the cheese is phenomenal. Like they really, like, cheese is epic here. And so the Dutch. Yeah, I mean, we were at the market this past weekend, and there was a German family there, and they were buying, like, I think I was in the wrong line. I was behind them, and they just kept ordering. They were at like 250 euros worth of cheese, which is like, ice chest quality, a full thing of. So they have really good cheese here, really good vegetables, no spice, not a lot of like Dutch food. There's some new modern Dutch cuisine that has actually been, for our anniversary, we went out and it was pretty all right. But, if you're looking for, if you're coming from Spain, France, Italy, Greece, it's Texas even, it's pretty bland, like excruciatingly bland. But again, that's why my salsa game, I've started making salsa every weekend, and I'm starting to dial into something that is sort out your condiments. You cannot get bacon here. I don't know why. They have a huge pork industry, but we got bacon, and it was so salty that it was inedible. We washed it even, and we couldn't. It wasn't like safe for the children, kind of salty. And so that a decent American ribeye is a hard fought thing. So 9 months in, we've got a couple of semi-viables, but nothing. So, the vegans will do well here, I would say.
Live on French fries and cheese, man. Sounds good to me.
French fries and cheese, yeah. You could do.
Just don't expect a glass of water to wash it down.
Yeah, exactly right. You can get blueberries that are like the size of plums here. It's that's pretty awesome. So it's uneven, right? Like every place is good at some things and not as good at others. And the Dutch are pretty well sorted out. It was pretty cool. We had our neighbor came over to watch a movie, and he's like, "Oh, I'll bring over some local beers." And, I mean, I'm from Texas. I'm thinking like Pabst or like some shitty local, I mean, like, okay, maybe there's some better craft stuff now, but like that didn't really get me that excited. And then, oh, you're bringing over like Chimay and all of these like Belgian ales. And I'm like, right, I'm in the place that beer was invented. So yay, or in the greater beer, area. And it's like, oh, local beer is here, right? Is Heineken. fresh without any preservatives. Like that's pretty fantastic. So I don't know. I'm not trying to get everybody to move here, but it's pretty nice. It's
You're digging it.
There's wild blueberries right across the street from my house, and the kids just go out in the summertime, and it's good.
The juxtaposition of that versus like also having a massive international city just right at your doorstep that you can ride a bike to and tram to in just a few minutes is the thing that I think is hard to grasp if you haven't been to a place like this, where you're just like, they're not two separate worlds. They're right there next to each other, and you can have this like beautiful family life in a safe area and also walk in or ride your bike into an amazing international vibrant city. That's a pretty epic thing.
Well, even in the dangerous areas here, it's not that dangerous, right? I mean, like there are places with some trouble, and there's Rotterdam has this whole cocaine trafficking thing going on. So there's some stuff going on. I mean, it's not, you're not like, you're still on Earth, right? Where people are coming in and out and all that. But I mean, again, with the kids in the city, like our biggest concern is that they're going to be hit by a bicycle, and that is a very real concern, and it's a constant concern. But again, it's not like, out of all the things that can happen to a kid, hit by a bicycle is a manageable stress level, right? And so, this is a tiny town. I mean, we're riding our bikes or taking the tram, and then, you'll take one tram this way here, and then you'll take another one, kind of here, and then you'll ride your bike and you'll go, oh, those are a block apart. I didn't realize that, like, oh, the Rijksmuseum and that's the same area. I didn't realize, like, I thought this was this huge city, but it's really, I just came from different directions and didn't realize that, we're on the far east side of Amsterdam, and the airport is on the far west side, and it's an hour bike ride to the airport. Right. Which is basically two cities from here. And so, you can, if you wanted to, you could absolutely ride your bike to the airport. And that's just, try that in New York. Right. I mean, no way. Right. So
yeah, not happening. I feel like we've done like maybe the government of the Netherlands wants to give us some sort of payment for the ad that we've done here, but it wasn't on purpose. We just both happen to love this place. I'm happy that I had a chance to meet someone that's actually made the move there, gone through the Daft program, and share that with the audience, because I didn't know the details and I haven't lived there. So it's very cool to hear how you and your family are thriving and thoroughly enjoying it. That makes me happy, and I'm sure people listening are pretty intrigued. Going forward.
One caveat is that the Daft Treaty is only for American and Japanese citizens, so that does narrow that access. I know other people can come here. It's just maybe a little less. It's a little less fast tracked, and it's a little less entrepreneurial. So I don't know the constraints of if you're Canadian or whatnot wanting to come over here. I know that the British with Brexit there's some backdoor kind of way to get in here that way. So but the Dutch are pretty reasonable, and I think if you're not going to cause a problem, they're probably going to find a way to accommodate you. At least that's been my experience. And yeah, the weather and the food are challenging at times, but other than that, it's been just fantastic. I mean, the housing market is hard. Like it's like 20% per year right now growth. So and rents and stuff like that. So you'd have to probably, depending on what your means are, like we just put an offer down on a house significantly over, and they're like, yeah, we really wanted 5 times that over. Okay, well, enjoy your house, and so it's a challenge, and so, but you can also live in Leiden or in Utrecht or in one of these other towns, and you can actually get to Central Station in Amsterdam faster than I can. Right? So it takes me about 25 minutes to get there by tram or something like that. Maybe 17 plus the walk. Yeah, it's about 25 minutes for me to get in Central. But from Utrecht to Central is like 25 minutes. And you're, so the space here is a little different. So you can absolutely live in, my lawyer lives near Rotterdam, and she works every day in Amsterdam.
Yeah, like to put that in perspective for somebody, I mean, that would be like in the US, like if it would be like Chicago, if you lived in Chicago and you worked in New York, and like, there's this like, you'd think there's this big distance between the two major metropolises, but it's not. It's 30 minutes by train.
It's an hour and a half drive. It's honestly, you live in North Houston and you work in South Houston, you're looking at the same amount of commute. And this is on a high-speed train with Wi-Fi, and you're looking at windmills and tulips as you whiz past. And it's pretty civilized, man. I have to say. So yeah, I mean, my other expat lifestyles have been good. Vietnam was very volatile and ridiculous and wonderful. It was right as the country was sort of starting to come out of its slumber in 2000. China is like living in the future. I mean, everything is LEDs and moving, and so many people and so much going on and so much business and all that. But it's both of those places are hard, right? I mean, it's not easy living. It's, there's a lot of high amount of friction and abrasion, even with very friendly people. It's got an intensity, to it. Sweden, I met a lot of really great people there. It is a beautiful country, but it didn't click. And it's a very different culture than Dutch culture, despite kind of a lot of proximity and similarities. It's pretty divergent. These guys are much more risk takers. Swedes are very less so. I think it would be a fair statement. And I don't know. I like the Dutch. Like, I mean, I'll meet a guy who's taking my rental car at a parking garage, right? And like we start talking politics or joking. And if you're not fragile, they'll love you here. If you are, you might find them a little, like, oh, you're an American. You guys do anything stupid lately? And I'm like, okay, well, hi, here's the keys to the car, But if you can laugh at yourself and don't take things too seriously here, I find that I get along very well. My average encounter with them is usually extremely positive. So
I agree.
I feel if the government is listening, thanks for having us. We feel very lucky to have this as an option and have the means to be able to make this happen.
And also feel free to compensate us in whatever means you feel necessary for bringing lots of foreign investment to your country.
No, I don't think you understand Dutch culture properly. Then that's not going to happen, right?
We didn't even get into the tickies and stuff. I was on that last note, and we'll wrap it up. I had a good Dutch friend of mine who he loves just doing all the stereotypical Dutch things and making fun of them. Send a Tikkie. I think, is Tikkie the correct word? It's basically like kind of like Venmo, but specifically for dividing checks, so you can divide checks like perfectly. And like he sent me a Tikkie for like €1.12, on like a €3 purchase split between 3 people. And so it's just it's a funny thing that's somewhat true. And I also have a Dutch friend here who's the most generous person with his money. He's always picking up the tab for everybody. And so it's stereotypes can be fun and true, and I love it when they are. It's a little joy that I get in life, but they're not always true either.
Well, I mean, there's some truth behind all that. We went to a garden party in the neighborhood, and we brought the coffees or something like that, and they'll bring the snacks. And there was 4 of us, and it was a plate with 4 pieces of chocolate on it. And it was just like, my wife's Chinese, like her mom makes fun of her for not cooking, 7 dishes for every meal, right? And soup and all of this stuff. And it's just like that qualifies as and another plate with 4 cookies on it and 4 chocolates, and everyone gets one. And it's just, I mean, it's endearing in how kind of like there's just moments of Dutch culture where you're like, I like it here, but I am not Dutch, and I am now reminded in that moment that I'm not wired. I'm more, let's cook a bunch of food and let's all, eat it and let's feast. And it's like, it's a different thing. And we got reprimanded by the school nicely, but lunch is bread and cheese. You can toast it, but that is what you make for, you don't send spaghetti. No, a salad. No, nothing like, so their lunch is bread, cheese, you could throw a carrot in, cucumbers, tomato, like something in vegetables, and then a snack is a fruit, and those are the choices. And it's anything beyond that is kind of like, well,
What is the justification here? Is it like you're being extravagant? Like it's like
I don't know that I can't I don't want to speak falsely or something like that. But there's a Dutch expression which is you can like basically only eat one warm meal a day,
Okay.
and like you don't like having a hot lunch is like. I guess it's decadent. I don't know. It's excessive. It's not done. So I'm sure any Dutch commenters will add some clarity. But our perspective, our school said, don't, I mean, Chinese wife, there's leftovers, and that would be normally no. It's bread and cheese and some vegetables, and I mean they grow to be 2 meters tall here all the time. So I mean whatever they're doing is obviously there's not a shortage of nutrition here because they're freaking giants here. I'm 6'3" and feel average. Sometimes I feel tall, but usually around immigrants. I'm not in a tram full of Dutch people. I'm not an armpit, but like. God damn, they grow big.
I was sitting with a Dutch guy one time here in Spain, and he might have had a few sangrias, and he was just pointing and going, "That one's Dutch. That one's Dutch. That one's Dutch." and it was just all the tall people. So it is again a true stereotype. That's a really interesting thing about the bread and cheese.
Boterham is. I mean, you'll have we're doing some business here, and there's business guy, 50-year-old executives that their lunch is like a piece of bread, a piece of cheese, and a big glass of milk. And that is like a very Dutch lunch, and so I feel as though that's a missed opportunity. I think that some tacos would still qualify as a lot of these things. We try to slip in quesadillas sometime, just test the waters, see if we're it's still cheesy bready, but does that count, or are we going to get the finger wagging?
Insert a bit of that Tex-Mex into the Dutch lifestyle at where possible.
Yeah, I've been working on my salsa and getting some tests with my neighbors to see if the spice level is within Dutch tolerances and all of that stuff. So we're pushing that envelope, trying to add something to the culture as we're enjoying.
That's awesome, man. This was so much fun. I'm gonna let you go. I know you have plenty to do, and it was nice of you to take so much time to tell us about your journey and the life there in the Netherlands. Just a blast hearing about how the family's thriving and doing well. So thank you for this. Do you guys have any blog or social media or anywhere that people can kind of follow along? Or are you keeping that stuff pretty private?
We don't have any familial stuff. No, I kind of pulled off. The business has its blog and all of that stuff, but in terms of our family trajectory, I after the last election, I realized I'm done with most of social media. You can find me on me.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we'll insert a link there just in case anybody wants to follow along.
Yeah, happy to talk to anyone. So yeah, wonderful. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and look forward to maybe connecting with you over some bread and cheese and a small glass of water in the Netherlands.
Well, I might find myself in Spain before too long as well. So we'll talk sangria and pulpo soon enough.
Oh man, this sounds right up my alley. All right, thanks, Jared. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the two following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.